When you think about history, are there lots of old guys wearing wigs and stockings? When you think about history, is Napoleon really short? And folks have wooden teeth. Do you know that history can be the most incredible, amazing stories for you and me? Sit back and listen to a story right now. It's honest, it's fun, and it's sure to.
Hi, young historians. Welcome to another episode of Anytime Now. I'm Brooke, co-founder of Honest History. Are you as excited about this episode as I am? I sure hope so. We're about to dive into another story-filled adventure and learn something new. And remember, by learning more about the past, you can make a positive impact on the future. So pack your bags and let's go.
How old do you think robots are? We often think of these machines as pretty new, but what if I told you some of the oldest robots existed over 800 years ago? If we travel back in time to the golden age of Islam, we can uncover one of history's early robot inventors. He lived in an ancient land that is part of modern-day Turkey, working at the royal palace. He crafted beautiful devices that dazzled the king. The inventor's name was Al-Jazari, and this is the story of his incredible moving machines. Our story begins over 800 years ago in a land called Upper Mesopotamia. There, in the distance, was a beautiful palace. It sat high on a rocky hill overlooking a great river. The palace was called Artuklu. From here, the kings of the Artukid dynasty ruled. A boy named Ismail Al-Jazari watched his father as he tinkered with his tools. Al-Jazari's father was the chief engineer of Artuklu Palace. He spent his days planning new designs to impress the powerful king. The bright young boy was eager to learn from his father so that one day he could build his own inventions. The boy, Al-Jazari, got his name from the place of his birth, called Al-Jazira. It is a land in Mesopotamia that lies between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. These rivers were always bustling with activity. Trade ships carried people and goods across the water, bringing silk, spices, and new ideas from distant lands. Al-Jazari grew up during the golden age of Islam. During this time, Muslim rulers encouraged their greatest minds to dream up new inventions. Science, math, literature, and art flourished across the Middle East. It seemed as if scholars were on an endless quest for knowledge. Many of them translated ancient texts from Greek to Arabic. Using the knowledge of Chinese scholars, they learned how to make paper, and soon they were able to write and collect books. It was also a time when people of different cultures and religions were able to share knowledge with each other. During the Islamic Golden Age, Muslims, Jews, and Christians came together to explore new ideas. For a bright young boy like Al-Jazari, growing up during this time was exactly what his mind craved. Unfortunately, historians don't know much about Al-Jazari's early life, but they do know what happened when he grew into a young man. Like his father before him, Al-Jazari became a chief engineer of Artuklu Palace. The talented engineer spent his days making improvements to the grand buildings and gardens. Whatever the king asked for, he would design. For 25 years, he served the royal family at the palace. As an engineer, he was skilled in writing, drawing, and building. He also had another very important gift, a huge imagination. Al-Jazari's mind was constantly buzzing with new and exciting ideas. Late into the evenings, Al-Jazari would take out a quill, dip it in ink, and draw on pieces of parchment, sketching his ideas with precision and skill. But Al-Jazari wasn't just drawing his ideas, he was building them. He would spend hours crafting gears, tiny scoops, and wheels. Slowly and carefully, he would assemble all the pieces to make these machines that no one had ever seen before. Machines that seemed to magically move by themselves. Today, a machine moving on its own isn't very shocking. We have all sorts of automatic machines. Some of us may even have machines that vacuum our homes and trim our lawns. But in Al-Jazari's time, such a machine was revolutionary. He lived in an age when there was no electricity, no light bulbs, no cars or factories. Most things, like washing clothes, had to be done by hand. Al-Jazari's machines were met with gasps and awe. He built devices that spun on their own, played music, and even washed people's hands. How did these machines work? Was it magic? These were the questions people had as they marveled at his inventions, and Al-Jazari was eager to answer them. He was not a magician, after all. He was an engineer. Why shouldn't everyone know how he built his incredible machines? This is exactly what Al-Jazari was thinking when he went to see the king. That day, the inventor brought the king one of his new devices. The king looked at the machine and thought about it quietly. Then, he said, "You have made all these devices alone, and through hard work you have made sure they work. Do not lose all that you wearied yourself with and built. I wish for you to write a book for me about your creations." So, Al-Jazari followed the king's orders and wrote a book. He called it The Book of Knowledge and Ingenious Mechanical Devices. It would be unlike any book anyone had ever read before. You see, Al-Jazari realized scholars often left things out of their writings, and sometimes they didn't even make sure their inventions worked. "I found that some of the earlier scholars had made devices," he complained, and described what they made, but they had not considered them completely. Al-Jazari wasn't going to make the same mistake. His book included drawings and step-by-step instructions. It was a how-to book for anyone who wanted to create their own incredible machines. Some of his machines were useful, like water-raising devices, while others were just for fun. He wowed the court at Artuklu Palace with imaginative water clocks, fountains, and drinking devices. He read for hours, studying ancient texts and thinking of ways to improve old devices. He often took inspiration from ancient Greek thinkers and fellow Islamic inventors. One day, Al-Jazari had an idea. He crafted 10 human figures out of papier-mâché. One of these figures was a king, painted in red and gold. Next to him, Al-Jazari placed a servant who held a jug to serve drinks. Then he added 4 miniature musicians. They held harps, tambourines, and flutes. His idea was to create a machine that would make these little musicians play music on their own. But how? He had thought long and hard about this invention. Suddenly, he came up with a solution. He crafted a small boat out of wood and placed the 10 figures on top of it. Now came the tricky part. Inside the wooden boat, he built pegs, rods, small buckets, and wheels. Once he added water, the buckets and wheels inside the boat would tip and turn. This would move the rods connected to the musicians above. Almost like magic, the harpist began plucking the harp, the flautist began playing the flute, and the drummer banged the tambourine. A miniature orchestra had begun. Satisfied with his new invention, Al-Jazari brought it to the palace. While people gathered for a royal party, the excited engineer placed his boat in a nearby lake. As it floated on the water, the tiny band began to move and play. The people at the party gasped in amazement. Al-Jazari smiled to himself with pride. He did not know it then, but he had created one of history's first musical robots. And that's because he had done something revolutionary. By changing the pegs inside the boat, he could change the beat of the musician's drum. His floating orchestra was programmable. That's right, Al-Jazari had built a machine you could program centuries before the first computer. And this brilliant inventor was only getting started. Just wait until you hear about the other machines he created.
Hi friends, are you enjoying today's episode? I'd like to take a quick break from the story to tell you about another great place to learn about the past. Honest History creates magazines and books for kids that are filled with fun stories and activities that bring history to life. From pirates to spies to great inventions and so much more, you'll learn about interesting people, places, and events from around the world that made history. Created for kids ages 6 through 12, you can sign up and receive new adventures delivered straight to your doorstep every quarter. Just visit honesthistory.co That's honesthistory.co to sign up today. Oh, and here's a special offer for our podcast listeners. Use code ANYTIMENOW for 10% off. Again, that special code is ANYTIMENOW. Okay, let's get back to the story.
While working at the palace, Al-Jazari was often thinking about ways to dazzle the king. But he saw the potential for his technology, not just for entertainment, but to help people. Could my machines be used in medicine? He wondered. He quickly began sketching out a plan for a new invention. It was a special device to measure blood. Now, you might be wondering, why would he need to measure blood? Well, during Al-Jazari's time, bloodletting was a common practice. In medieval times, people believed that taking blood out of a person's body could heal them if they were sick. They thought bloodletting brought some balance back to a person's body. This was based on an ancient idea called humorism. What is humorism, you ask? It's how people once thought about the human body. You see, they used to believe that the body was made up of 4 different fluids called humors. The 4 humors were blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. People believed the amount of each fluid in your body determined how you acted and felt. If you were very sad, they thought you had too much black bile. If you felt cold all the time, then they said you had too much phlegm. And if you had a fever and were sweating, physicians thought you had too much blood. Throughout his life, Al-Jazari would have seen physicians coming to people's home to perform bloodletting. First, the doctor would make a small cut in the patient's skin. Then, they would place a heated glass cup over the cut. The warm cup would cause the blood to bubble up at the surface. The blood would then drip from the person's arm into a bowl. How much blood they took depended on the illness. A very high fever, for example, often meant a lot more blood. Today, doctors would never do this to their sick patients. It's dangerous and definitely would not make them feel any better. But in medieval times, it was a standard practice. Because bloodletting was so common, Al-Jazari thought a beautiful device to measure blood would be useful. And, as far as we know, he was the first to ever make such a thing. One evening, he started drawing out his new idea. "I've decided to use 2 scribes," he said as he sketched 2 figures on the page. One of these scribes held a long pen, while the other carried a writing pad. Below the 2 scribes, Al-Jazari drew a bowl. And then he drew many tiny ropes, weights, and pulleys. His design worked like this. As blood flowed into the bowl, the ropes and pulleys would lift the scribe's pen. The other scribe's writing pad would start to rise too. By looking at the 2 scribes, you could tell how much blood had been collected. But there was something else to this device. Bloodletting wasn't very fun. As you can imagine, cutting into someone's skin hurt.
Ouch.
And Al-Jazari thought his machine would help distract the patients from their pain. They could watch the scribe spin and turn, and maybe that would help them think less about the cut in their arm. For many physicians, the device may not have seemed very useful. It was a lot more complicated than a simple bowl. But like all of his devices, the bloodletting device was beautiful. And this was because Al-Jazari wasn't just a scientist. He was an artist. He decorated many of his incredible machines with gold and other vibrant colors. He took inspiration from ancient Greece, India, China, and Egypt to create something entirely different. And none of his inventions was as magnificent as his elephant clock. Standing over 10 feet tall, this machine featured a miniature elephant topped with a golden canopy, human figures, birds, and dragons. The amazing time-telling machine used water to move the different pieces. It even made sounds. The bird at the top of the clock chirped every half hour. Anyone who got to see one of Al-Jazari's machines in person was lucky indeed. And for those who couldn't, they could try to make their own using his book. The Book of Knowledge and Ingenious Mechanical Devices included 50 different machines and automata with step-by-step instructions. For historians today, it's an astonishing resource. No other engineer from that time had left behind such detailed instructions about their creations. People can even use the book to build Al-Jazari's machines today. In fact, if you travel to Dubai, you can see what his giant elephant clock looked like. Historians carefully recreated the magnificent clock using his detailed instructions. Instructions that were written over 800 years ago. Today, this clock stands inside Dubai's Ibn Battuta Mall. As scholars turn the yellowed pages of his book, they start to wonder, are these machines early robots? And it's easy to see why. Many of the principles Al-Jazari used to create his moving machines are used in robotics today. Some historians have even given Al-Jazari the title Father of Robotics. From floating orchestras to medieval devices and magnificent clocks, it is hard to deny the genius of Al-Jazari, the robot inventor of the Islamic Golden Age.
Welcome back! What did you think of today's adventure? We hope you learned something new. Be sure to share the story with your friends and family, and use what you've learned today to go out there and make a positive impact on history yourself. That's all for now, but if you want to learn more about important and amazing stories from the past, be sure to subscribe to Honest History Magazine, where you'll discover stories from around the world. Thanks for listening! This episode was narrated by Randall Lawrence and written by Heidi Coburn. Production was led by Robot Pirate Media. To learn more about Honest History, visit us at honesthistory.co and follow along for updates on social media.